Excuse me.
Jim, can I ask you to just ask them to unmute in the control room, please? Well, that was excellent.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, at 7:01, I will open tonight's meeting of the Lunenburg Select Board of Tuesday, July 27, 2021. I'll ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page. You'll be able to find this recording of this meeting on Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after the meeting has concluded. We are also have a Zoom meeting open for those who would like to participate in public comment only. So again, public comment only for the Zoom in the beginning or end of the meeting. If you would like to do that, the webinar ID for tonight is 909-174-0347 if you have the Zoom application. And then if you want to enter by phone, you can dial 888-475-4499, and again, the webinar ID is 909-174-0347. The agenda that we have posted lists all the topics which may be discussed at this meeting and are all those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. I will open it up and see if there's any public comment from the board this evening.
None.
None.
The only public comment I have is that I went to the first one I was able to go to of the band concerts that are in front of TC Passios last night. There are 2 more sessions, I believe, for the next 2 Mondays. I would encourage people to attend. It's really a great location. The acoustics actually are much better than the gazebo is, and a lot more parking there, a lot of space for people to spread out. So it's a really great local arts event that's been going on for, as we were told last night, for 24 out of the last 25 years. Since last year was the first year, because of the pandemic, they didn't have band concerts. So they will be going on for the next Mondays. They start at 7 p.m. on Monday night in front of the TC Passios building. Public comment from the public. Anybody hand raised?
No.
No. Do you have any announcements?
I do. I have 2 announcements. The site visit for the proposed 40B project is tomorrow at 1 o'clock, as notified to all the relevant boards and committees that will be attending. And the 40B workshop is next Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the middle school, high school auditorium. And
Got moved. Oh, okay, it was always there. It was always
Yep.
there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, confirmed.
Yeah. I apologize.
And attendees should follow mask protocols. So if you have not been vaccinated, please wear your mask when you attend the workshop at the middle school, high school. There will be a grand opening for the new owners at 451 Mass Ave. They asked to forward on this announcement to anyone that wishes to attend. So their grand opening is August 3rd, Tuesday, August 3rd, through Thursday, August 5th. They will have a ribbon cutting ceremony on Tuesday, August 3rd at 11 a.m.
And remind people, what is that, the golf?
Yes, the
Okay,
golf
the
station.
golf station on the corner of Chase Road and
Yes.
2A, okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Who from the board is going to be at the site visit tomorrow?
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Jim, are you going to be there?
No.
Okay, so 3 of us, okay. Appointments, any appointments tonight? No.
No.
So interviews and appointments of another kind, reappointments. So we have election officers' appointments of, for Warden Glenn Reinhardt, Republican, Deputy Warden Ann Shattuck, Republican, Clerk Darlene Steele, Democrat, Clerk Judy Holly, Democrat, Inspector Susan Andrews, Democrat, Deputy Inspector Joanne Bergeron, Democrat, Inspector Kathleen Pliska, Republican, and Deputy Inspector Jane Randley, Republican. And these are
All
appointments.
existing election officers looking to be reappointed.
Okay,
And there's a memorandum from Elaine in the drive.
and did anybody have any questions about any of these? This was all done in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 54, and the town committee chairs, both Mike Clark and Carrie Ayers from the Republicans and Democratic town committees respectively, were notified, and we have to appoint these no earlier than July 15th, but no later than August 15th. So these are all of our election officers?
Yes.
Okay. If there are no questions or further discussion, I would entertain a motion regarding these appointments.
Sure. I move to appoint the following election officers. Glenn Reinhardt, Republican, as warden. Deputy Warden Ann Shattuck, Republican. Clerk Darlene Steele, Democrat. Clerk Julie Haley, Democrat. Inspector Susan Andrews, Democrat. Deputy Inspector Joanne Bergeron, Democrat. Inspector Kathleen Pliska, Republican, and Deputy Inspector Jane Randley, Republican.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Please notify all those whose name was read that they have been reappointed, and to, I assume, like all officers, they have to get re-sworn in.
Yes.
Town clerk is powerful, but their spells only last 1 year, so you have to get respelled. Okay, other appointment, ratification of town manager's appointments of board and committee clerks, Amanda Keck, Megan Lorden, and Kristen Levine. I will hand it over to you, Madam Town Manager.
Thank you. So this position or positions was newly created, and appropriation was made at the annual town meeting to support different boards and committees with their minute taking. So after interviews were conducted and letters of interest received from 2 of them are current employees that work in different town departments, but not that would be in the same area that they would be doing the minutes for. We are recommending these 3 individuals. Amanda Kowick, she currently works at the Council on Aging. She's their administrative assistant, so she would be taking the minutes for finance. Megan Lorden, she works in the treasurer collector's office, and she would be taking the minutes for the TCP Building Design Committee. And Kristen Levine, she would be a new part-time employee, and she would be taking the minutes for Stormwater Task Force, Parks, and Capital Planning. And 2 of the people have prior experience with writing for a paper. Amanda, in the past, has written for the Lunenburg Ledger, as well as Kristen Levine. She currently works for Sterling Media, and she previously covered public meetings for Lunenburg years ago for the Ledger as well.
One of the things I would request is, now that we're having people who are not members and that they're actually assigned and being paid to do this, is to come up with a unified format, which, I mean, they're all pretty standardized, but if they can come up with a unified format to put everything in, that way would making reading minutes from one to another really easy. So, and I think all of these, especially the people who wrote for the paper, they would probably understand that, if we can just get as much uniformity as possible between all the minutes. Any questions about any of the applicants or any of the town manager appointees, I should say?
No.
If not, I will entertain a motion regarding the 3 appointments by the town manager for ratification.
I move to ratify the town manager's appointments of clerk for boards and committees, Amanda Koick, Megan Lorden, and Kristen Levine.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to your town manager report.
All right, I'll start with the announcement of existing vacancies. There are 2 vacancies on the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 citizen at large and 1 representative from the Historical Commission. 1 vacancy on the Board of Assessors, which is a joint appointment between the Board of Assessors and the Select Board until the next annual town election. 1 vacancy on the Bylaw Review Committee. 2 vacancies on the Commissioner of Trust Funds, which is a joint appointment between the Commissioner of Trust Funds and the Select Board until the next annual town election. And there are vacancies on the Economic Development Committee, 1 person that's recommended by the Open Space Committee, 1 citizen at large, and 1 ex officio member that is a business owner. There is 1 position to be held by a tenant at Pearlbrook Apartments for the Housing Authority. That vacancy exists. 1 vacancy on the Senior Work-Off Program Committee, and 1 associate vacancy on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Anyone interested can find the application form on the town website, complete it, and submit it back to the Select Board's office. I have an announcement about the retirement of our principal assessor, and I would just like to read a little something that she wrote to me today. Our retirement date is November 30th, 2021. I have enjoyed working here in Lunenburg. It has been a great place to work, probably the best place in all my 18 years of being an assessor, a very well-run town. However, with my 5th and 6th grandchildren arriving this winter, and all my other grandchildren in North Carolina, it is time for me to relocate. Thank you for the opportunity to work here. And Sue Byrne, she has not been here a long time, but she has been a true asset to the town. She came in after we had a private vendor for many, many years, and she was the perfect person to fill that position. She transitioned within this past year from the old CAMA system to Vision, which that was a huge undertaking in itself to go through that, and she's really created a more well-run department in the assessor. So I want to thank her for everything that she's done for the town. She will be missed.
Yeah, on behalf of the board, please extend our best wishes to her. And I'm sorry that, her retirement is quicker than she had foresaw, that we had foresaw, but I'm appreciative of the impact she's had during her time here.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to say that in the 11 years I was on the Board of Assessors, she was the best thing that happened in those 11 years. So it's kind of, I'm sorry to see her go.
Me as well. So the assistant town manager will be advertising the position this week, and so we want to get a jump start on while Sue is still here, and hopefully have someone in the office and work with her for a little while before she leaves to get familiar with the office and get up and running. Make sure there's no delays on anything.
It's excellent plan.
Update on pay-as-you-throw bag price increase. After the July 13th meeting, I notified our bag vendor, Waste Zero, that bag prices will be increasing 15%, and they have sent out letters to all the retailers that carry the pay-as-you-throw bags. The price increase will go into effect on August 16th, and I put that up on the town website today. Fiscal 22 state budget update. The governor signed off on the fiscal 22 state budget recently, and DLS released, which is Division of Local Services, released the final state aid figures. As reported at the last meeting, the final overall impact to Lunenburg is a deficit of $126,551. We'll watch our actual new growth versus our estimated new growth to see if this will come in higher, and as this would offset this deficit. An update on invitation for bids and request for proposals. The assistant town manager has advertised the request for proposals for the landscape architectural and engineering services for 30 School Street. Proposals will be due on August 17th at 10 a.m. Once the assistant town manager and I have reviewed the proposals to make sure they meet the minimum quality requirements, the select board will review the non-price proposals and rate them using the evaluation criteria at the August 24th meeting. The assistant town manager will be assisting the Parks Commission on drafting their bid documents for a master plan for Marshall Park as well. An update on 925 Mass Ave. I reached out to the Mass DEP Deputy Regional Director of the Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup last week, and unfortunately there is no new news to offer. The last time he touched base with the office that handles leaking underground storage tanks, the LUS funds were tied up with the federal infrastructure bill. But I will continue to check with Mass DEP on the availability of the funding to clean up this site. This afternoon, I received the existing condition survey that was performed by Dillis and Roy for this property, and this was a necessary step to eventually dispose of the property and is relevant to the cleanup of the property as well. So check that box. American Rescue Plan funds, which are also called Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. I had a roundtable meeting with the police chief, fire chief, DPW director, finance director, IT director, the economic development manager from Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, and spoke with the Board of Health about possible eligible uses of ARPA funds. The U.S. Treasury has identified 5 core areas for eligible use of these funds. They're as follows: supporting public health expenditures by funding COVID mitigation efforts, medical expenses, behavioral health care, and certain public health and safety staff. 2, addressing negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, including economic harms to workers, households, small businesses, impacted industries, and the public sector. 3, replacing lost public sector revenue, using the funding to provide government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue experienced due to the pandemic. 4, providing premium pay for essential workers, offering additional support to those who have borne and will bear the greatest health risk because of their service in critical infrastructure sectors. And 5, investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, making necessary investments to improve access to clean drinking water, support vital wastewater and stormwater infrastructure, and to expand access to broadband internet. So there were a number of ideas that we discussed at the meeting that ranged from expanding broadband access, stormwater projects that would improve water quality, costs related to the Police Reform Act, such as a mental health clinician, environmental remediation of certain parcels, public safety capital projects, and implementing IT recommendations from the Continuity of Operations Plan were some of the ideas. My plan is to first send a list of the potential projects to the U.S. Treasury, who is the entity that determines whether it's an eligible expense under the program, and then proceed with diving into the costs associated with the possible projects and programs before I prioritize a list. The parameters for the use of these funds will be that the cost to implement should not exceed the funding available unless it is a planned long-term program expense. It should not negatively impact our current staff by adding an additional workload, thus impacting operations. And we want to spend these funds in a way that provides the greatest impact to the town and our residents. I've asked the Finance Committee for their input and asking the Select Board for any input from the board before I present a plan for use of the funds at a future meeting. It will take time to get answers from the U.S. Treasury and to research all the associated costs for each of the possible projects or programs. So I would anticipate that a list would be presented probably the end of September, the beginning of October.
Was the culvert on Flat Hill discussed at all?
Are you talking about the one
One that's under.
that is currently down to 1 lane?
Right.
It was part, when we discussed stormwater.
Okay, right. The other one is that, there was the determination about some of the lead in the water at some of the, especially the Passio School, and I don't know, because we don't know the long-term plans for the Paseo School, but other schools, if maybe those can address that, the
Yeah.
drinking water in the schools.
Yeah, related to the, so that was going to be one of the questions as far as the Flat Hill Road culvert, but the way it's worded, it sounds like it has to improve water quality. So that would be
Well, just,
the relevant answer that I'd need from U.S. Treasury.
right, right. All we can do is ask,
Yep,
so.
yep, exactly. In other meetings, events, and announcements, the farmers market on the Ritter Lawn is being held Sundays until October 10th, 10 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. Summer band concerts are Monday evenings at 7 p.m. until August 9th, with a rain date, if any are rained out, of August 16th, and are outside the front entrance at TCP. These are posted now on the town calendar and the website, and if they need to be canceled, be updated on the town calendar. And that's all I have for today.
Excellent. Any questions for the town manager, for anybody on the board? Excellent. Old business.
I have a question for you,
Yes.
though. Are we going to have a future agenda item to discuss town manager's request for ideas? For that?
Sure, I mean, you can submit them directly to the town manager if you want. They don't have to be necessarily at a meeting, but would it be helpful to have at a meeting?
Yep, if you want to have like a brainstorming.
Yeah, we can do it on the next meeting, since its time is of the essence, sure. Should this go under old business, even though it's not here? Because this is not on the agenda, this.
Yeah, or action, yeah, that the board has taken action to
Okay,
sign
action.
off.
We'll do it
on.
on action items. Old business, number 1, review and vote on the select board goals, which are now in actual written form. That's on your Google Drive. Did everybody get this, and has everybody read this already?
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions or omissions or additions or modifications? I'm sure there's other verbs I missed or,
No, I think, Mr. Chair, thank you for putting this together. I know that it's not always easy. Sometimes I'm sure it feels like you're herding cats. But I do appreciate you putting it together. And, we had talked about kind of providing the APDC with a longer kind of history of building attempts, but the town manager went ahead and did that for our last meeting.
Right.
So I noted that wasn't included because it was already done.
exactly,
So,
yep. And I did, to actually make them able to be accomplished, or I'm just trying to think of a word, but I actually made them a lot smaller, the actions, so that they didn't go on in paragraphs and have all these descriptive things, so we know, like, especially in objective 2, is like, those are all pretty achievable,
yeah.
and it's pretty clear what we're trying to do, so. And number 2, which is working with the town manager and the finance director to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption or abatement, really dovetails with the town manager's final goals for this fiscal year, so those are really in alignment. Okay, so if there's no discussion on this, then these are things we've talked about over the past few weeks. I would entertain a motion regarding accepting the fiscal year 2022 select board goals.
I move we accept the fiscal year 2022 select board goals.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those, well, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Number 2 in old business, discussion of notice of mass housing on the 40B site approval application from Pondview Commons LLC, which is the Howard Street project owned by developer Kevin O'Brien. We have reached out, town manager has, and the select board, to gain public comment. I think all of us have seen those public comments. They have been unanimously in one direction, and that direction is not in favor for various reasons. I will say that for the public, that in the 40B process, the town is fairly constrained. So it's not like this is something we opt to do. To deny a 40B project takes considerable cause. So believe me when I tell you that we share, well, I don't know about share your sentiments, but certainly we hear your sentiments. And the town didn't reach out, like, this is not something that we looked for somebody to do. This is being brought to us from a developer, and it has very precise guidelines of how it proceeds through the town. So we will keep people apprised of every step that we can. We'll have, as the town manager said, we'll have a site walk tomorrow for the applicant and members from the state of Mass Housing will walk the site, ask questions of the developer, as will members of local boards, people from this board, other commissions and committees who will be involved in the process. So if it meets, the first hurdle is project eligibility. That's what this site walk is about, and we have the ability to comment on that by August, what is the date? August
16th.
16th. At that point, it's given over to the state to determine whether the project is eligible for 40B application. And if it passes then it would go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, who hears, by state law, hears all 40B projects. So, again, this is very, very controlled by the state about how this proceeds. And it's not necessarily a short process, and it can go on and get very detailed and very different aspects of the project. So we will look to see where each step goes, and we will take each step individually. I don't know if anybody on the board has anything else to add.
I see that there's a resident from that area in the audience here. I don't know that he's here to make any comments, or if you would entertain that, but.
Sure, I'd entertain somebody, if somebody would like to comment now. Sure. Just when you get to the mic, just say your name and your address, and then.
Yep. My name's John Morielli Sr., 8 Sequoia Drive, Lunenburg. So I live at the top of the hill. And I'm not opposed. I know a little bit about 40B. I'm in the profession, have been my whole life. Not 40B, but construction, excuse me. And I'm not opposed totally against the 40B. I understand how it works. And like you said, it's all run by the state, really, and their guidelines. But my concern, and I'm not opposed to Mr. O'Brien's project up there. I've been doing construction my whole life, so for me to be opposed to that type of thing would be kind of ludicrous, you know. I'm opposed to really the tactics and the way that it's all being presented and going to the town. I've been to many of the water district, not everyone, but many of the water district meetings, and we weren't presented with any plan in those meetings. Okay, there was nothing in writing. It was all talking. I would have liked to have seen some kind of plan that I could maybe vote for or against. We didn't see that. Okay, I don't care if you're doing 40B or you're doing single-family housing or what you're doing. The first hurdle to me, well, there's two hurdles to me, is water. You can't build anything without water. 40B needs sprinkler systems, so that's even harder than single-family residential, okay? You need certain pressure, you need calculations. There's a ton of stuff you need to do that project. Again, I'm late to the 40B aspect of this project. I just found out about it the other day, but I heard about the meeting. I wanted to come and I'd like to see some kind of something on the water and the infrastructure going up there. I play with that hill all winter long, and everybody plays with it. It's tough getting up and down that hill. The town just implemented a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. You can't get up that hill 25 miles an hour in the snow. It ain't gonna happen, all right? Now you're gonna add, 600, 700, 800 cars a day. The road we need to do something with the road. So whether that's the town doing something up there or Mr. O'Brien, don't care, but those things need to be addressed, And I understand the process with the 40B. It's gonna go forward and you guys can vote on it and everything else, but there's a lot of stuff going on up there.
Oh, by the way, we don't get to vote on anything. This board doesn't get to vote on
No,
anything.
but ZBA.
Right. Well, and that's only if it gets past the eligibility, so.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, Madam Town Manager, is the applicant's package that officially opened this process, is that public record?
Yes, it's on the front page of the website.
Front page of the website. If you want to download their plans, it should all be there. If you have questions,
And I'll review it.
please,
Yeah.
yes, if you feel as a developer, as a contractor yourself, that there are deficiencies, please point them out to us.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, you can't build without water. It's as simple as that.
Well, that's going to be the first question, of course. Anybody who was at the two water district, the special meeting and the annual town meeting, annual town meeting of the water district knows that that's going to be the first question that's going to be asked tomorrow, so.
Yeah. And again, I would have liked to have seen more during the water district meetings.
Yeah.
But there was really just a lot of arguing going on.
Well, and just for the record, I've said this on other things, and again, this is a point of fact, I'm not editorializing anything. Mr. O'Brien has a 120-house permit of development approved for that site.
With septic and well.
Well,
Yeah.
he just has it approved, I mean, right.
Well, I think the court decision said with septic and well.
Again, I don't know the fine details of that, the planning board would, but, you know, he has an approval, so it's not like he doesn't have permission from the town to build already.
Right. No, I understand
Yeah.
that. And I'm not saying we should stop that.
Yeah.
I'm saying, you know, we need to know more about what's gonna happen with the road and more about what's gonna happen with the water.
Right.
You know, there's really not a lot of water up there now. I've been living up there over 15 years, and everybody in the cul-de-sac runs out of water every year. You know, we had to drill over 600 feet, which is pretty deep.
Yep.
So it's not an easy place to build up there. It's all stone, you know? So, all right, I appreciate you listening to me tonight.
No, I
just
appreciate
wanted
you sharing your viewpoint and
my
perspective,
concerns.
thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair,
to- Yep.
would it
Mr.
be
Marino.
beneficial for John to come to that meeting next, on the 3rd? That's a workshop meeting, the
The
public?
3rd is a public
That's
meeting.
a public meeting, so yeah, well, yeah, next Tuesday is a public meeting at the middle school, high school auditorium about this.
That's the
Well-
1 o'clock, I think?
No, that's tomorrow's at 1 o'clock. That one's a night one at 7, right?
7 o'clock.
Right, so same time as this meeting, just a week from today.
Yep.
Instead of a selectman meeting, we're gonna have, that will be in place of the selectman meeting. And we'll have had the site visit tomorrow, so we'll have more information. And again, you can share your perspective as we hope other people will do at that meeting.
Right. And that'll give me time to review it as
Right.
well.
Yep.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about this particular subject?
Are you what's the extent of the discussion that, it says discussion, but are you looking for us to opine, or are you just looking for us to talk about process?
No, I'm not looking to opine. We're not at the opining stage.
That eliminates my
We
comments.
want to make sure, the discussion was so people are clear about what up until this point and up until next Tuesday, I want to keep this to the process of how we're evaluating this, what is the overarching authority that 40B falls under, and things like that. I want people to know that it's not under the guise of this board, certainly, it's not even under the planning board. Nobody asked for somebody to say, hey, present this. The 40Bs can be presented at any developer's own decision to apply at any property in town. So, you know, these come to us, we don't ask for them to come to us.
Yeah. I would offer then, I know that we're gonna have this meeting next Tuesday, but I manage, two large developments. I manage several developments, but two of them were former 40Bs. And I see some of the complications that come when you, take a project that normally goes before a planning board and it goes before the zoning board of appeals, who ordinarily don't do site plan approval. So I would encourage the planning board, and maybe I should go to their meeting and say this, but I would encourage the planning board to thoroughly review these plans and provide some questions over to the ZBA related to them that would be relevant for them to ask during the process. You know, one thing that I've seen that I'm having issues with right now is significant deflection in a 40B, in which they used 2x4s between the floors, 24 inches off-center. And the planning board never would have approved that, because that's not building code. But because it was a ZBA process, somehow it got through. You know, another 40B, no insulation on the first floor underneath buildings at all. So sometimes, again, I know that building inspectors are supposed to catch some of these things, but sometimes things get through that probably shouldn't get through. So I would just encourage the planning board to offer some insight to help the process.
I would, thank you, and I agree, and I think, if they don't already, by all the communications from the town manager about these upcoming meetings, I would encourage them to be involved at every stage, so even though they're not, any board, not just the planning board, but anybody, conservation is gonna have a say in this too, with, the water district is gonna have a say in this too, even though they're not part of the town government. We want all of them to be involved, and we're gonna, if this gets past project eligibility, we're gonna want people to get at those ZBA meetings and bring up every single aspect that you're discussing and more. So whatever's in their purview, they should bring up at these meetings. So the ZBA may be the one hearing it, but those other boards and commissions can certainly give testimony and provide important data
Yeah.
for the project.
If I may,
Town
Mr.
manager.
Chair, part of the materials that I forwarded to the board today was a presentation by the land use director. There was a slide about the process. So there is another opportunity for all the relevant boards, if the site application is approved by Mass Housing, we will then get another application from the applicant to ZBA. So there'll be a period of time where all the relevant boards would submit comments on that application as well. I just wanted to add that we're asking that comments be in by August 9th, a week prior to, and the discussion on the comprehensive letter would be on the August 10th meeting. Just to give that enough time to formulate all the, what will be included in the letter and the content in time for the August 16th deadline. The format for next Tuesday's meeting is going to be a presentation by Attorney Adam Costa. There'll be a Q&A on process after that. He's going to do an overview, the roles and responsibilities, and overview of 40B. And the last piece will be a comment period. So it's going to be structured as a select board's meeting, where the board is the entity receiving the comments. That's why it's relevant that it be a select board meeting, and that all other boards are attending a workshop, which is excluded from, they don't need to post their meetings, and it wouldn't be appropriate for them, any permitting boards, to deliberate and make comments that would be prejudicial at that. So that's going to be the structure for next Tuesday's meeting.
In preparation for that meeting, I've spoken with the town manager, and one thing that's missing from the comprehensive permit law that I reviewed that was distributed by the town manager is it's really unclear what project eligibility means and what is the requirements and the criteria for a project eligibility. So I'm hoping that the land director and our town council are looking into those, like what are those? I couldn't get a list. One of the things that people have commented on is that the whole purpose of having 40B in the comprehensive permit law was to allow for, so you didn't have NIMBY rules, right? Not in my backyard rules, and you could not zone people out of living in certain areas. But on the flip side, you want to have affordable housing where there are services. And if you go to a place that has no sewer and no water and no public transportation and no any commercial district for retail marketing, grocery stores, anything, that would seem to me to be a criteria for these. And I'd like to know if that is true. That is just something I assume would be part of it. So if we can get information about that for that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else on this? Okay. Current business, discussion on establishing means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption. See, we're already working on our goals. We just passed them and we're working on them. So this is a preliminary open discussion on our goal, along with the town manager's goal of establishing in some fashion a senior tax exemption or abatement of property tax in town. It's long been suggested that, seniors who have long-standing here, who maybe have lived most of their life here, don't want to be forced out.
Thank you.
Don't want to be forced out of their home or living in here because taxes get too high, and even though they recognize the need for the new buildings that we've done in the past, it's still, because property tax is done evenly by properties, sometimes that forces them out. So we felt, many of us, if not all of us, felt that if there was a mechanism that we could employ at the local level to provide relief, that we would do it. And for the longest time, I was given the counsel that it could only happen at the state because of that, but it turns out that because we live under home rule charter, our town is organized under that, we actually have more flexibility to do this, what we're trying to do. So that being said, what we want to do is establish what the criteria are for those people that we want to provide such abatements for, what things would have to be true for them to receive such an exemption or an abatement on taxes. So that's what this is about. So I'll open it up to the floor, if anybody wants to start.
Sure.
Mr. Jeffries.
You look like you're about to say something, Mr.
I don't care who starts, but so if you're good, I'll go. So, I mean, certainly, obviously, the obvious one is income and asset eligibility, but also longevity in town. I mean, we want to establish, I would think, some sort of requirement as to how long you've lived in town, how long you've contributed as a member of the town, so that we don't have a floodgate opened up to people coming here and establishing residence and they're eligible in 12 months. I mean, so I envision this as, somebody who's been here for a decade or more, 20 years. I'm just throwing numbers out right now. It's the concept.
Yeah.
So
I've thought of this in several different ways as far as eligibility, and I'd like the broadest eligibility possible, which is to mirror the Senior Circuit Tax Breaker program. So I just quickly looked it up to see what those thresholds are. And that's based on how we operate in Massachusetts, in which certain seniors who meet these income thresholds receive sort of a credit on their taxes. So for individuals, it would be $61,000. For head of households, $76,000 a year, and for married filing jointly, $92,000 a year. I would be in favor of trying to move in the direction that if you're eligible for the Senior Circuit Tax Breaker, that you'd be eligible for this program. I also in that line would not be in favor of evaluating assets, simply going off of annual income. And then for longevity in town, I think that I would be looking at about 15, 20 years. I think we may want to think about two programs, and that's my opinion. One program that's this kind of broader reach, that's has a longer longevity requirement to it, and then a separate program that has a shorter longevity to it that really is for people who are not of these means. So people where their combined income is low, in retirement, closer to, let's say, $40,000, $50,000 a year, that we can look at some kind of exemption. I know that we've had discussions privately, separately, about some kind of structuring it somewhat like a reverse mortgage type deal, but I'd be in favor of, like I said, two different programs, one that gives a better benefit for people of lower income, and then a broader program.
Todd, Jim?
The first action, with regards to the first action, what if anything, or when would we get some kind of some kind of ruling or whatever on with respect to our authority to do this? Has that already been done, or is?
Yes, it has been. So back in February, I had given the board information on a home rule petition. So it would have to be done at a town meeting. You'd have to petition the state legislature to create a special act. So Wakefield did this, and they also mirrored it on the senior discount circuit breaker income tax credit. Theirs was 65 years of age older by the close of the calendar year. Co-applicant must have turned 60 years of age, have owned and occupied a home for the past 10 consecutive years, have no other significant assets like a second home or trust fund, etc., and make timely application with the Board of Assessors, which their time period is August 1st to September 30th. And a copy of their home rule petition was in that memorandum.
Can we open, start a new folder in the Google Drive, call this senior tax?
Certainly.
Property tax abatement? So the first action was just a review of that. It was really just to check, a really quick checkbox for
Yeah.
people. So we know we have the authority to do this. Wakefield has already done this. What we will do is, we should recognize the fact that, like with other things that we do with the charter, it's required, that it pass special legislation. So we don't get to implement it without the state approving it. So we have to have all the backing information. But we do have the authority to do it as long as the program passes muster with them and our local delegation presents it to the legislature as such.
Okay. My second question is it possible to get a copy of Wakefield's?
It's in this memorandum from February, the whole,
Oh, you already sent it to us?
yeah. So I'll put it in the Google Drive
Oh,
folder.
I'm sorry.
I've just asked her to create a
I
new
must have
folder in the
forgotten.
Google Drive that's specific for this project,
Yeah,
so that everything will go in there, yeah. So we can see how theirs is worded.
yeah, I mean, instead of reinventing the wheel, take a look, it sounds like we're on the same page
Sure.
with what Michael just suggested.
I like Michael Ray's idea for, kind of two tiers of relief. I'm not quite sure what level for that first tier of people that we give for tax relief. That would possibly be a sticking point for me, but I think absolutely having a second tier for people who are really, kind of at or near the poverty line is absolutely critical that we do that, because, the taxes in the town as they go up and property values go up, that can be, a third of someone's or more of their income every month is going just to pay the taxes for the town. So I think that's critical, and I'd absolutely support that. But the level that we give for exemption or abatement for a portion of taxes for people who are slightly better off, that would be a point for me, whether 10 or 15 or 25%. I also think that broader program should have some components of assets tied to it. But that's something I personally have to do a little more research in that to see what a reasonable level is.
Mr. Franco?
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts to this whole thing. When you move this lever, or, maybe it's planets, when you pull one planet out of its orbit, it affects all the other ones. We have to look at what each scenario would do, what the impact would be on those not eligible, the remaining taxpayers. How much, if we make too many people eligible, then other people's taxes are going to skyrocket. So we just need to, there just needs to be a lot of mathematical grinding, I think, under different scenarios to see how it would play out. But I also like I mentioned it when I first said it too, about the asset aspect. Somebody may not have the highest income in retirement, but, they're sitting on, $2 million in retirement assets or something. They can probably afford to handle the taxes. I'd like to know that. So, and assets are a requirement now for abatements. So, I don't see why it shouldn't be for this.
Do we consider, I think that with assets, what my concern is that you take someone who's 66, who's planning on living for 30 more years and has millions of dollars sitting in a 401k or some kind of retirement account, and that then works against them. You know, and that I think that as I think of assets, I would expect that something like that, would a 401k, someone's retirement plan, that would be exempt. Whereas, you know, if you have a second, I would be open to the idea of looking at assets with the understanding that we're not attacking retirement accounts. But other assets, second homes, you know, investment accounts that are not tied to a retirement account. Because on the other side of this, you know, you look at some military retirees that get a pension and there's no set dollar amount in asset, but they have a guaranteed benefit that's worth a lot of money over time. So that's, I guess, what I'm getting at, is that we want to have a system that's fair and reasonable. So I think we may want to look at how we're looking at retirement accounts.
So I'll weigh in, one thing that nobody mentioned early on, but I'll just throw it out there because we're talking about senior citizens, although it sounds obvious. So obviously age is going to be one of them, so nobody mentioned age. So age, I've separated income from assets. So income is another criteria, assets would be another, and longevity in town was a third one. Michael, you brought up tying it to the same criteria that the senior tax circuit breaker program is. So my thoughts, and I'm for all those, you know, those are the discussion points, and what the numbers fall in is going to be is going to be determined by the financial models that we use, the financial director and the board of assessors and everybody. So I don't know at this point how many people in this town are over 65 and have lived here for 15 years, and what taxes do they pay now, right? So I have no idea about that. We need to know that. Because tax exemptions from one side is not going to change the amount of money the town has to raise. So for this to pass, if we give seniors and people who fit into whatever criteria we define, whatever taxes aren't collected, everybody else in the town is equally they're going to get distributed to everybody else in proportion. So that's an important note. Number two, as Mr. Franco said, there are a lot of levers, a lot of dials that you adjust, and it changes everything. That's going to be complicated enough. And so while I understand what Mr. Jeffries is asking for a two-tiered process, I think we got to start with the people who are the most in need. Those are the people who are at the lower tier, the people who would definitely qualify and that we're looking to make exempt. We can always broaden it later on if it's successful. I hesitate to try to bite off more than we can chew, and we're working with too much, and we may get bogged down in that. Just a word of caution. And number three is whatever criteria we use, especially when it comes to forms that people have to fill out already, we want to really tie that to things that already exist. We don't want to create a whole bureaucracy that the town has to go through to try to make people qualified. We don't have the means to do that. We don't have the manpower to do that. We don't have the expertise to do that. So we really want to tie things to other programs that the state level or the town already has as far as establishing eligibility. That would be my thing. So we have to keep the red tape at a minimum. It's got to be easy for anybody to understand who qualifies, how you qualify, and what forms you have to submit to do it. And then for the people on the other side, it's like, okay, how many exemptions are we giving as far as dollar amount, and how does that affect your total taxes itself? So those are I'm working it from the other way. I mean, the criteria we can get to by addressing those core principles to me. So if we say, hey, we're not going to give more than X amount of dollars in exemptions and work back from that, because all of a sudden if people are saying, okay, I'll just hypothetical here. If we say we're going to give this many seniors to fit this model, they're 65, they live in the town 15 years, they meet all the income eligibilities, and their total, exemptions are going to total an amount that raises everybody else's taxes $10 or $20 a year. That's going to be a whole lot different effect than if we exempt a lot more, and all of a sudden somebody's taxes are going up $100 a year. So that we're going to get, because this has to pass town meeting before it passes the state legislature. So we have to make something that we think is fair and addresses the senior question, which I think is a very valid one. but I also don't want to make it so broad that people who don't need the assistance are eligible for the assistance. I mean, so we want to make sure that people who are getting it really need it and fit under this category. And I also agree with, Mr. Franco, and I think other people have mentioned it too, that we don't want to be a haven for people to come to Lunenburg to retire. So the longevity has to be sufficient enough that somebody came here, I can't see it being less than 10 years. It may even be more than 10 years, but at least 10 years. So somebody doesn't come here a year before they're retiring and all of a sudden they get a nice, tax break because they moved here. So,
Yeah, I think the concept is for me, it's twofold. One of it is, if you pay your taxes, over your life living here, you get to a certain age and your income just isn't what it used to be, that you shouldn't be forced to have to sell your house, move out of town. And that, some residents have said to me, and I know I've said it before, that their taxes now are higher than their mortgage ever was because they bought a home in 1970 or 1960 and they paid it off, and now taxes are significantly more than what they were making in their blue collar job. So I think one of it, a big prong of this for me is helping people stay in their homes.
Yep.
And then I think the second prong for me is also, things change in retirement. A lot of seniors now have their kids moving back home with them. There's a lot of, they're taking care of grandkids. It's just a different climate. And I know that every penny helps when you're not earning an income. And, I think that, again, I do think that we should still approach a two-tier, and as we get numbers, the numbers may say, we can't do it. And I would agree that we would drop that off. But before we get to that point, I think I'm a bit sympathetic to those who are in those unique situations, people who are of more modest means or regular means, and being able to do the numbers and see at which point, you've kind of paid for your two kids that you put through the school system, you've paid for the neighbor's two kids, and at what point do we say, okay, I think you've contributed enough? And I think that's, for me, is that second part of it, is do we want to ask people forever, the most that they can do, or is there a certain point where we say, you've paid your fair share? And I think that is probably up for discussion and debate, but that's my approach to that second tier. And, if the numbers say no, then the numbers say no.
well, the first thing to do is find out how many seniors, we should probably, not tonight, but we should start at the first time we have a workshop, we should probably let the town manager and especially the finance director know, we should come prepared, ask them to come prepared with okay, find out all the stuff that we know from our tax records and with the assessor's office. How many people are over 65? There's got to be search criteria that we can put into the, you were on the board of assessors, there's search criteria that we can say who's above this age and how long they've lived here. Those are all existing.
Those are ascertainable.
Right.
Reasonable.
That's what we want to know. The assets is different. I do think assets, not income, but overall assets, I think is important. And we have to discuss that because there's always special cases. So if somebody's got, $1 million in land, but they have very low income, it's not going to be easy for them to sell land to pay for the taxes. Mm-hmm. But you also don't want people sheltering stuff either. So, it's a very, very tricky proposition. That's why I want to tie it to things that the state or the town already has for criteria. One of the factions that I think should be part of this too, if we ever get to the point. So again, the first part of the program to me would be exemptions, like people who would just okay, maybe you don't pay anything. Maybe that's not even doable. Maybe it's all abatements. Maybe you just get a 50% abatement on what your total is. But then the other thing would be that maybe there'd be a point, and we can discuss this at a much later date, maybe even after it's passed and it's an amendment, but we can certainly talk about it, and that is any Prop 2.5 overrides, whether they be operational overrides or capital overrides, that people who fit this bill would be exempt from any of those increases. So, again, we can discuss it.
No, as I recall, I thought that we did bring this up with Karen earlier in the year, and somehow I have a memory of her saying that it was going to take her till like the end of the summer to put all this together, as far as what those statistics are, how many people
We're
fall
almost near
into
the end
it.
of the summer.
Yeah.
Like, 7,
Probably
8
just
weeks away.
trying to get through the closeout of
Yeah.
fiscal '21.
Right on time.
I'm gonna follow up with our legislators too. It looks like there's a number of bills that were filed to create general law on creating a means-tested program.
Oh, good. That's even better.
And look at other.
I'm glad it's gotten traction, because I remember saying this, 13 years ago, and going to our, being a new member on the board and going to our state delegation and asking this and being told, yeah, it's gotta be done at the state, and I lobbied them and nobody filed anything. And so, I'm glad to see if we can get state done, that makes it even easier. Being at them to create a law that we just have to adopt, that the town just adopts this section of the law.
Right.
So I have age, income, assets, longevity in town. We have it tied potentially to senior circuit breaker tax abatement program that already exists. Those would be the focus of a workshop with the finance director to find out how many people this applies to, and by that definition, how much taxes those people pay already. So hopefully we get to a point, and that's one of the actions, is we work with them to get a model that we can start plugging in things. What happens if it's, maybe it's not 65, maybe it's 67 years old, maybe it's 10 years, 12 years, 15 years you have to be here. We can play with that to find out how much money we're talking about. And then the all-important thing is that the town is gonna pass it. It has to be, people have to accept, okay, I'm willing, because hopefully, maybe one day I'm gonna be one of those seniors, I'm willing to absorb that to help somebody stay in their home who has lived here their whole life, or a large portion of their life.
And one idea about, as we think about those who are who are closer to the poverty line, one benefit is probably SNAP that we can look into. That if you're eligible for food stamps, that you probably could be eligible for this. The poverty line itself is, to me, is absurdly low. A family of 4 making $31,000 a year is not considered to be in poverty, which I think everyone here would agree that that's poverty. So the federal standards just, they haven't kept up with the times. Whereas, the SNAP benefits, you're not going to get those making $61,000 a year, but you are going to be higher than the poverty line, and so that may be a good.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to consider, absolutely.
I would add that when that workshop happens, Karen will be good at crunching the numbers, but Sue Byrne really should be involved in.
Let's get her involved before she retires.
Right.
So so that puts an upper end on when she's
Yes.
involved. Well, can we get, through you, Madam Town Manager, can we get from the finance director, when is the earliest she can have those numbers ready? Because obviously it's pointless to have this without the numbers she needs to provide. And as soon as she can provide when she has them, I'll put it in your hands to just put it on an agenda that directly after that date.
Okay.
So if she says something on Monday, this date, make our meeting Tuesday. Because I think it really is just a spreadsheet exercise. The whole thing is just a spreadsheet exercise to see if I change this number, what happens to this.
And
I oversimplify it. Creating a model is not that easy, but,
And we can survey other towns that have adopted special acts and see what the impact has been on
Sure.
their
That would be
budget.
good too, yeah, to have.
That data.
Like what, we can review, of course, what Wakefield did, as Mr. Marino asked. Cool. Anything else on this as a preliminary?
Not as a preliminary, but Michael Ray did already touch on it, but maybe we don't want to open up this can of worms right now, but there was the second track, or the sort of reverse mortgage model track. Maybe we'll talk about that another day.
And I will say right now that anything that gets the town in something that, I thought about it too. If you were property heavy, so you were property rich, but but dollar, fluid dollars poor, then yeah, there's always the idea that you could put a lien on it and they agree to it, but that's a lot of overhead, and I have a funny hunch, I I even hesitate to turn to the town manager to look at the expression. There's a lot of overhead in that, and probably a lot of legalities that we don't want to get involved in, I would imagine.
Plus, you'd have to be darn certain that people actually know what they're getting into. I mean,
Well, that's what I'm saying, the
you know?
liability would be immense.
You know, so.
I mean, we could tell people, you know, we could tell people who don't qualify because of certain of those criteria, say, you know, you have the ability to go to a reverse mortgage outside of the town. You don't have to go through the town. I don't want the town to be in the reverse mortgage business. It just doesn't look good.
So, one of the things I was thinking about is, I'm very interested to know the number of taxpayers this is going to affect. I think that's going to be critical to the discussion.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, one of the ideas I had floating around was, you know, okay, maybe based on that, we can say at a certain criteria, say, you know, age 75, 78, whatever, you say, okay, you have a tax freeze. And then at maybe age 85 or 90, you're now tax exempt. And we can just do something like that because, you know, over 85, the number of residents is a lot lower than at 75 and whatnot. Something like that is something I was thinking about. Then it's not, you know, really an abatement, or we're not doing a reverse mortgage. We just say, okay, you lock this in, you know, for this long, and then, you know.
Yeah, we can do a phased approach, you know, the same adjustment criteria, but as the age changes, the value of what you're being exempted or abated changes.
Right.
Until it eventually goes away. I certainly can see that working. I mean,
Yeah.
we can look at the numbers of that.
I just want to add as well, this is going to coincide with, so the assessors are also looking at increasing the abatement amounts for the senior abatement. And that their goal is for the special town meeting. To have that.
Well, if
Those
this
thresholds.
would pass, I'm assuming that if we went with an exemption, not an abatement, then the
That was-
abatement program
yeah.
wouldn't really be in play. If the same people fit the same criteria and they're gonna get a whole exemption, then there's nothing to be abated, I guess.
Yeah, well, the way Wakefield's work, it's a credit, so, and it maxes out on, it mirrors the circuit breaker, so
Okay.
it's a maximum credit of, I think, $1,100 around there.
Yeah. I'm looking for something a little more significant, I think, as far as, I mean, for me. So that's why we have to do the numbers. We just have to do the numbers. It'll be a good discussion. I think it's a great program, and I'm so glad that we have the ability to, in our hands, to be able to do this, so. Okay. Well, what better time than in the beginning of the summer to talk about the fall special town meeting timeline?
So in your Google Drive is a proposed schedule for fall town meeting. And I've run this schedule by the town clerk, the town moderator, town council, and the finance director. All, that date works for everyone. So November 16th is the proposed date. It's a Tuesday, 7 PM. The warrants, proposing opening at the end of August to close on September 28th. And that gives us all our meets all our timelines.
Okay. I'm fine with the...
Any discussion?
I'm fine with the timeline. Has everybody seen it?
I don't have any issue with the dates.
Okay,
Neither do I.
all right. So that will give people plenty of notice once that vote of the board is taken on setting the town meeting date and opening and closing the warrant.
Excellent. Yep.
I'll be spending my birthday there. That's okay.
Oh, no. Really?
Well, we can have the moderator sing to you happy birthday.
It's probably,
In unison with the hopefully 70 people we will get there.
Hey, mine's in conjunction with a 40B workshop.
Oh, really? Yours is next week? Well, I mean, I mean, it's your age, right?
That's why Michael was staring at me when he was talking about the tax.
I think your income's too high.
Wow, see, all of a sudden, he discounted you. Like that. You don't even fit the criteria.
I was a town employee, I'm in a poverty line.
Oh, boy, oh, boy. He's gonna take out the violin now.
Fiddle.
All right, approval of town minutes of July 13th, 2021. Did everybody read them?
Yes.
Anybody have any changes, modifications? If not, I will entertain a motion regarding the minutes of July 13th, 2021.
I move to accept the minutes of July 13th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Here's something we don't get to do when we did Zoom, you just pass this down. Warrants were signed last week in the following amounts. We had an accounts payable warrant of June 30th, 2021, in the amount of $20,857.01. Another account payable warrant dated July 20th, 2021, in the amount of $86,451.22. Payroll deduction warrant dated July 21st, 2021, in the amount of $699,814.48. Another payroll warrant dated July 22nd, 2021, in the amount of $660,859.98. And finally, another accounts payable warrant dated May 31st, 2021, in the amount of $168,131.25. The loan payment was due May 1st, 2021. Action items. We have, the board at our last executive session had ratified the new employment agreement between the town of Lunenburg and the Director of Municipal Finance. The most important points is that it is another 5-year contract, effective backdated July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2026. It outlines 2 years of compensation, the first year being this fiscal year, to the rate of $104,900, and effective July 1st of next year will be a rate of $108,050, and the remaining years would be negotiated before the beginning of the fiscal year. Everything else in the contract remained the same, and we agreed to sign that, and I will pass this down for signature. While that's being passed down, I want to take this opportunity to thank the finance director, who's also the town accountant, Karen Brochu, for all her hard work, continued hard work. She'd been here when I started I'm sorry, she's probably not happy for me to say this, but she's been here since I've been here in municipal government, and she's done a phenomenal job working with multiple town managers, and those times when we didn't have a town manager or a CAFO back then in a 3-year absence. So her work has been really exemplary. She's great to work with, has a great staff, well respected in town hall, and I look forward to another 5 years of her working here with the same results. So thank you, Ms. Brochu.
Ditto.
Committee reports. I have no committee reports. Mr. Jeffries.
Yes. So the library does not meet in the summer, but there was a meeting of the Friends of the Library Trustees, and then, the different members do meet with the library director, Muir. So there was, as I noted earlier in the year, there was a strategic plan that the library has been developing. It's a way for them to access additional funding from the state. And one of the things that was identified in response was that residents in town were looking for the library to be open later in the evening and on Fridays. So the library is currently working on putting together a request for additional funding that will likely come to this board prior to the fall town meeting, but more than likely it may be an annual town meeting thing as part of the regular budget process next year. But their request is to increase their staff to be able to be open on Fridays. It's going to be about $50,000, and they're working on putting together a report that details what the money is going to be used for, what they expect the impact of the community is going to be. And so that's something that we should expect to see coming from the library in the coming months. MPO met last week. There was nothing too much to note there. It was just referenced that the project in Lunenburg was going well. The bike path that's on hold for a couple of years is, parts of it are still being developed. This is going from Fitchburg to Leominster, the walk-in path. And as we know, that they just added a bridge over Route 2, I think a week or two ago. MART doesn't meet again until the end of August or beginning of September. The date's not set yet. TCP Design Committee meets tomorrow at 5:30, and the meeting, I have to double check the location. I think this is our first one in person. So as a reminder, the funding became available as part of the annual town meeting on July the 1st. So this is our first meeting since then to be able to discuss the next steps to utilize that money to get that comparison. And then I did send a request over to the superintendent, just making the board aware, asking for her to comment on the impact of the 40B development and the other homes that are being proposed, what the impact on the schools are projected to be. And I asked for her to provide that to the town manager by the end of the month, so that way we would have the opportunity to review it, ask any questions, and that way there could be a revision prior to the August date. And then the last thing is the Housing Authority. They have a meeting coming up at the end of the month, and I am soliciting some residents there to volunteer for the open position. That's a tenant position. That's all I have.
Excellent. Mr. Franco, do you have anything?
That's it? That's all you have?
It was a slow month. Slow week.
Yes. So, the last Economic Development Committee meeting was on July 22nd. Actually, just so the public knows, those meetings are going to be the fourth Thursday of every month, 7 p.m. Oh, and actually, they're going to move them to 6 p.m. now. So I mentioned last time that we had been working on a survey to disseminate to existing businesses in town to sort of provide reflection and data and information on their experience going through opening up a business in town. That survey is nearly finalized. That's what we worked on last time. And we're also looking to maximize the dissemination of this survey to maximize the amount of useful data we can collect, including home-based businesses. So we're looking to identify business owners through, there are over 500 business certificates in town. We're looking to use assessor's records, business certificates, and work with the Lunenburg Business Association too to identify all the businesses. That's all I have for now.
Excellent. Todd?
MJTC's meeting was canceled in July. The next meeting is mid-August. I'll attend that, and that's all I have.
And Mr. Marino?
Nothing.
Okay. Mr. Jeffries, number 2.
Council of Aging. So Council of Aging met, and there were a couple things that came out of it. So I did get an update from Sue Doherty, the director. So a couple things were noted. So the rocks that were over there, I know that we're working with that homeowner who has the rocks. That's something that keeps coming up by the seniors, the impact that it has on them, and especially now that there's sidewalks going in over there. So the sidewalk construction's in progress, which has made it a little difficult for everyone to use Memorial Drive, especially with the population that visits the senior center. But everyone's excited to see the sidewalks go in and what that's going to be. The Council of Aging Board's working on policy and procedures along with a new Council of Aging Board member orientation kit. There was a tent installed in the rec room area for outdoor programs and dining, and this will remain up until the end of August. And if anyone wants to volunteer to support the kitchen, There's an extended leave for the mill site manager, so please reach out regarding that. And then indoor programs are 99% back to normal, including the monthly Lions Club pancake breakfast, Veterans Breakfast, and Memory Cafe. The new program, which is a big success, is Mrs. Bellows Breakfast Bar, which is named after Lois Bellows, who lived in the Eagle House during the Revolutionary War, and that's on Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. And attendance in general at the senior center is increasing to near pre-pandemic numbers. So all is going well over there. And again, if you have any free time, want to volunteer at the senior center or want to donate money, feel free to reach out.
Excellent, thank you. As was noted earlier in the meeting, the upcoming meeting next Tuesday, we will have the 40B workshop at the middle school, high school auditorium. And that will be at our normal time of 7 p.m. That will be a public hearing, so the public is welcome and encouraged to participate. And then, of course, our regular meeting, the 10th, the 17th, and the 24th. I will not be in town on the 10th, the week of the 10th, but I may be able to participate remotely. I'll be down on Long Island, have to take care of some personal things down there. So I may be available. If I am available, I will ask Michael to run the meeting, because I think somebody in person should run the meeting, and I'll just be a participant.
Okay.
I'll know more next week, so. Any public comment from the public this evening? Anybody raising hands?
No.
Any public comment from the board? No. Okay, we have an executive session. I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session, and we will adjourn after exiting executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21, Paragraph 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, in this case, the town manager.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's a roll call vote. Mr. Marino?
Aye.
Mr. Dwyer?
Aye.
Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries?
Aye.
Aye for myself. Good night, everyone. We will see you at the middle school, high school auditorium next Tuesday. Until then, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.
Good night.
The recording has stopped.
There's no instructions on how to use this. I missed the post-it.